So, Dire Straits' first big hit, Sultans of Swing, a kind of tribute to bands who never make it big but love playing. How did you come to write that?
It was a little deserted pub in Deptford where we were all living at the time. And the pub was semi-deserted and the band was down at heel, and it was just playing these Dixie standards and Louis Armstrong things, the way they always do. They're interested to make up those kind of bands. They're blokes that do all sorts of different things, aren't they? They're postmen and draftsmen, whatever, quantity surveyors, teachers, and different things. And they were expressing themselves. I mean, that's one thing that struck me. That whatever I might have felt about it, they were expressing themselves. And when the guy said, "Thank you very much," and we are the Sultans of Swing, there was something really funny about it to me, because Sultans, they absolutely weren't. You know, they were sort of rather tired-looking blokes in pullovers.
The track Lady Writer was a big hit from your second album, Communique. Is that song about anybody in particular?
I just saw some woman talking on the television. It's absolutely what it says. She was just talking on television. I mean, I think I was starting to realise then I could write about just about anything that I felt like that I wanted to write about. Dylan probably a strong influence there, where you can write about anything that you want in a popular song.
One of your most romantic songs, Romeo and Juliet, was written presumably at the time you were ardently pursuing your romance with America.
Well, actually, I was living in Camberwell at the time with Romeo and Juliet, and I was actually sitting on a floor. I didn't have any furniture. Moved down the road from Deptford, and I remember just writing that sitting on the floor, basically, pretty desperately in need of furniture.
I've heard that Private Investigations was inspired by the Los Angeles crime writer Raymond Chandler. Is that true?
I sort of equated it with a Chandler-esque thing, just from reading. You know, the idea of exhaustion and what have you got at the end of it? Or nothing, really. You know, the thing that you love a lot, which is music, can also hurt you a lot. I mean, with music, the highs are really high, so the lows can be pretty low. The California that's portrayed by Chandler is it's pretty bankrupt in terms of its morals, and it's a world where there's not a lot of trust, and a world where different things go on, and so on and so forth.
One of your biggest hits, Money for Nothing, was reputedly based on a conversation you overheard in a shop?
Yeah, I was in New York, and it was one of those big appliance shops. Basically, the layout was quite simple. They had a kitchen display unit in the front with a table and chairs and all the drawers and everything. That was all there in the shop window. And then you go inside, and there's rows of microwaves and all the rest of it. And then at the back, there was big walls of TVs, all tuned to MTV. It was like a stage set, because there was this Joe Sixpack figure there with his big check shirt on, and he had a barrow of some sort, and he'd been pulling boxes of stuff in and out of the back door, and he was holding forth to an audience of one or two about the performances on the MTV. The kind of stuff he was saying was so classic. I managed to eavesdrop for a couple of minutes, and then I went and got this piece of paper and started writing down the lines, things he kept saying, "That ain't working," and all that "maybe get a blister on your little finger" I loved. He said a lot of that stuff, and what's that? You know, Hawaiian noises, and so in a sense it was just a piece of reporting. But again, you know, it's one of those things where you're aware that the situation has the possibilities to create something.
The title track of your most successful album, Brothers in Arms, is quite enigmatic. Is it actually a war song?
Again, you know, sometimes there's a phrase that'll just stay with you for a while. You're not necessarily sure why. And it was the time of the Falklands War. Like father said, the time, he said, is kind of ironic that The Russians being brothers in arms with this fascist Argentinian government. Brothers in arms, he just used it there. The absurdity of it seems to stay in the mind.
The opening track on the On Every Street album is Calling Elvis. Why did you want to write about him?
I got the idea from someone I knew talking about his sister, and he was saying, you know, it's like calling Elvis, trying to get hold of you, you know. And these days with answering machines, it is a bit like that sometimes. The one answering machine talks to the other answering machine.
The song On Every Street seems to be a song about everybody's struggle to stay true to themselves. Is that how you see it?
I think it's about the fact that we're capable of holding an idea and just trying to stay true to it, looking for something that you can't really find. And also just wondering why you're doing it. I mean, I think there's a line in there, I don't know why it is, I'm still on the case.
What may be one of Dire Straits' most lasting musical legacies is that sax line from your latest Trick.
This sax line is a funny thing. It just absolutely seemed to have to be there. Mike Brecker played it. Chris White used to play it on tour a lot. A little bit afterwards, Chris would tell me that, you know, every time he went into his brass shop to get new reeds or mouthpiece, somebody would be sitting there playing it. You know? And I always thought that was funny because when you go into guitar shops, it was often Stairway to Heaven that kids would play in guitar shops, and I never thought that I would ever be responsible for something that people would play in a music shop. It's turned out to be saxophone line.
The theme to the film Local Hero is where you explore your interest in Celtic music. Was this you revisiting your roots?
I think with having grown up in the north, you do absorb some of that stuff. And I remember Scottish music in Glasgow, and I remember all those Tyneside songs very well. And I think that the sort of lyricism of those, but I've always been really attracted to those sorts of melodies anyway.